Hello Dragonfly Swarm. Gallagher is a very strong and at one point a very underrated character, and Harmony MC is a very strong, completely free to obtain character. So the only way to make that sentence better is by saying you can smash these two together and create a meta breaking team. Good break. Because they're good in break teams. These two characters have essentially defined the current break-focused meta of Honkai Star Rail, and even as much attention as this meta has garnered, I don't think it's enough, because these two work so well together while simultaneously enabling some of the strongest teams in the game currently. I needed to ramble about it. And ramble I shall, because in this video, I'm going to explain why Gallagher and HMC are a meta-defining god duo in Star Rail, discussing the intricate details of their synergy with one another, the importance of their ability to enable powerful teams together, and all the ways in which you can implement your own Gallagher and Harmony MC into your teams. Before I start, if this video helps you, please consider subscribing because it really helps the channel. So let's first address the big shiny point. Why do Gallagher and Harmony MC work so well together? Well, the first thing you need to understand is that for Hoyoverse and any other gacha developer, giving out accessible characters like free main character variants and powerful 4-stars is already a pretty massive rarity, but for them to have not only given us Gallagher and Harmony MC, two of the most accessible and efficient enablers of break teams in the game, to have also given them undeniably flawless synergy with each other is unheard of. As I'm sure you already know to some extent, Harmony MC is currently the sole reason why Superbreak teams have become not just viable, but very top of the food chain meta. Characters like Firefly and Boothill were designed to capitalize on break damage and thus are wildly enhanced by the support HMC has to offer. Even beyond the dedicated break DPS units though, Superbreak is such a universally viable damage source because just like regular break, its formula relies heavily on the raw stats of both your teammates and their victims. So theoretically, a lot of other weaker DPS characters, and even non-DPS characters, can squeeze out a respectable amount of damage thanks to Superbreak. And by that logic, what better non-traditional DPS is there to slot inside of a Superbreak team than the god of break support, healing, debuffing, and SP economy himself, Gallagher. Gallagher is a 4-star abundance healer whose kit provides him with a very simple way of consistently healing his team, while simultaneously applying debuffs to the enemy's ability to withstand break damage. But even beyond that, he provides the team a lot of SP relief and dishes out quite a bit of toughness damage himself over his rotations. The thing is, all of these mechanics are exactly what Harmony MC needs in order to perform at their very best. With Gallagher's ability to replenish SP for the team via his basic attack ultimate basic attack combo, he can often provide enough SP relief for HMC to comfortably and consistently spam their skill, which is typically necessary in order to charge their ultimate reliably, as well as dish out their own toughness damage during their rotations. This is especially apparent though at E6, when Harmony MC's skill is granted 2 extra applications, because by that point they're generating even more energy and toughness damage, so the value of Gallagher's SP friendliness raises that much higher. That, however, is only scratching the surface of their synergy. With Harmony MC's newfound comfort in spamming their skill, thanks to Gallagher, they can make immense use of the besotted debuff his ultimate applies to enemies, because for every enemy their skill tags in a single turn, they trigger the flat healing passive for themselves that many times. This effectively makes HMC a nearly unkillable pseudo-tank alongside Gallagher, so long as you can keep his besotted debuff on enemies consistently. But oh no, amazing utility is not the only thing they provide for one another, because they also quite significantly buff one another's damage, as well as the damage of their teammates, but hold your horses, we'll get to that later. In regards to their ability to buff each other, Gallagher is exceptionally efficient at breaking enemy toughness bars, which not only allows everyone, including Gallagher, to more consistently make use of the Superbreak modifier, but thanks to Harmony MC's talent, it also rapidly recharges their ultimate when Gallagher does inflict weakness break. Not to mention too, Gallagher's builds typically involve stacking break effect on him for the sake of his healing output, so this accumulation of break effect will also simultaneously cause him to deal quite significant Superbreak damage, and he can inflict this Superbreak damage in massive AoE with his ultimate. And as if all of that wasn't already enough, Gallagher's besotted debuff forces afflicted enemies to take a percent-based damage increase to break damage, which is a very rare, very powerful stat to be able to inflict on enemies. Break damage and Superbreak damage already have massive damage potential, but adding more to that damage with a percent-based damage increase is absolutely wild, and I'm not entirely sure if this percent-based modifier modifier applies also to Superbreak damage, but even if not, the amount of extra damage the team can squeeze out with Gallagher's buffed break modifiers and Harmony MC's Superbreak is absolutely insane. So all in all, the reason why these two work so well together is because they have so many tiny details in their kit that complement one another while simultaneously enabling massive damage from each other and their teammates. Gallagher provides HMC the resources they need to spam their ultimate and their skill, and HMC provides Gallagher with massive Superbreak modifiers and perfect use of his besotted healing. This synergy single-handedly rocket launched break teams up to the very top of the meta 3-ish months ago, and continues to perform the strongest out of any team in the game currently, and it'll likely continue to do so for the foreseeable future. So long as limited characters like Firefly and Boothill exist, the kinds of characters who can inflict toughness damage with trivial ease, Gallagher and Harmony Trailblazer will continue providing a perfect platform for damage and support. And even if future characters come out that power creep HMC's Superbreak or Gallagher's supportive capabilities, they're both very accessible units. I mean, HMC is literally completely free. See, it's one thing if you establish this kind of meta with almost exclusively with limited characters, but to have given such game-changing utility and power to such accessible characters, Hoyoverse has intentionally or otherwise created an absolute monster of a team archetype, and they've given Gallagher and HMC the power to steer it at 200 miles per hour into your nearest endgame content highway. No future limited character can change that. Sure, they could power creep HMC and make an even stronger Superbreak enabler, but at least for right now, that doesn't even matter. Premium Harmony MC teams clear endgame content so fast that it literally would not matter from a meta perspective if they got power crept. And I should slap this bad boy onto the screen too. Currently, and for the last month or two now, Gallagher and HMC have held the #1 Memory of Chaos team in the game, with Firefly and Ruan Mei. Obviously, this team has the favor of most in-game content leaning into the Superbreak meta, but even with that in mind, the fact that this spot is held by a completely free character and a 4-star who only just recently got people's attention is quite a feat. So how does one build their Gallagher and Harmony MC optimally for each other, and more specifically for the purposes of this Superbreak meta? For Gallagher in particular, we as a player base initially assumed his best builds to be slightly different than they actually are, so looking first at his best relics, it's pretty much universally stated that he should run a 2-piece Hackerspace set for the extra 6% speed boost. This is to help him reach his minimum speed recommendation of 134 so that he's at least taking 2 turns per cycle, but honestly, as long as you're not sacrificing his survivability and other utility stats, the more speed he has, the better. To pair with your 2-piece Hackerspace set, you should opt either for a 2-piece Passerby set for the increased healing output, or any of the 2-piece sets that grant bonus break effect, such as Iron Cavalry, Watchmaker, and Shooting Meteor. Generally, when pairing Gallagher with Harmony MC, I would recommend running the 2-piece Passerby instead of the sets that grant extra break effect if you've already acquired E4 HMC, wherein they now grant bonus break effect to the entire team. But it's also true that the more break effect Gallagher has, the more damage he can deal while simultaneously healing more efficiently. So either way, you can kinda let your substats determine your best options here. As for the planetary sets though, Gallagher works with a whole range of planars, but his highest performing set is Forge of the Calpagni Lantern because it not only increases his speed, but also conditionally grants him a powerful 40% break effect increase. The only issue with this set is that it does require him to consistently attack enemies that have fire weakness. Now, if you're running this god duo with a Firefly team, that becomes trivially easy to work with, and this artifact set becomes far more consistent, but otherwise it's a bit situational. If you want a similar planar set with slightly less power but more consistency, go for Kingdom of Banditry. To pivot the playstyle a little bit though, I also recommend considering planars like Fleet of the Ageless and Broken Keel, because both provide easy ways for Gallagher to buff his team as well as grant himself a modest stat increase. Finally, if you're struggling with Gallagher's energy, you could consider using Penacony Land of Dreams, but I only recommend actively farming for this planar on Gallagher if his and Harmony MC's team is supporting a fire DPS, because otherwise you're literally only getting 5% energy recharge rate, which is trash, not worth it. When you're farming for all these relic sets, you should be looking for an HP or defense body piece, speed boots, an energy recharge rate or break effect rope, depending on your team's energy needs, and an HP or defense sphere. As I brushed on earlier, Gallagher's only real requirements for stats are getting him to at least 134 speed, but if you happen to reach higher speed breakpoints, that's kinda chill too, because he makes great use of speed for funneling SP and debuffs to the team. It is also worth noting that while Gallagher does enjoy break effect stats, especially with Superbreak on his team, I don't recommend trying to push above 150%, and you generally don't want to sacrifice sacrifice speed or survivability for it either, especially when your Gallagher is already receiving external break effect bonuses in combat. And finally, for Gallagher's light cones, when he's paired up with Harmony MC, you can't go wrong with any of these options, but you should take a moment to consider that some will wildly outperform others depending on your specific circumstances. For example, Quid Pro Quo can arguably be his best option if your Harmony MC or damage carry is struggling with energy, and it's an especially valuable light cone on Gallagher since his ultimate gives him an extra turn, which means he's able to proc the light cone passive way more often than the average abundance character. But other light cones can perform just as well when your team's energy issues aren't an issue. Multiplication can be very useful for allowing Gallagher to funnel more SP to the team, and his signature light cone, What Is Real, can also be a pretty nice choice if your energy needs are met and you don't mind sacrificing utility for survivability and increased personal Gallagher damage. Other worthwhile light cones include Huahua's signature, Night of Fright, which can be a well-rounded premium alternative to Gallagher's easier accessible options, and Post-Op Conversation, which is generally just a 4-star version of Huahua's light cone, but it's still nice. Overall though, the most universally useful light cones for Gallagher, especially with Harmony MC, will be Quid Pro Quo and Multiplication, since both provide very efficient ways for Gallagher to boost the team's energy management or their SP management. Now then, moving on to the build I recommend for Harmony Trailblazer in this synergy, the super simple part is that their best artifact set is by far a 4-piece Watchmaker set. The break effect provided on the 2-piece bonus is already great for their kit and their ability to share break effect with the team, but the 4-piece bonus provides even more break effect to the team whenever HMC casts their ultimate, and they'll be doing that a lot in your rotations with Gallagher. If you don't yet have enough functional pieces for a 4-piece Watchmaker though, you can temporarily use any 2-piece break effect set with a 2-piece hacker space. This combination will give you a modest boost to Harmony MC's speed and their break effect bonus while you continue farming for a functional 4-piece Watchmaker, which will still be by far the superior set to shoot for in the end. As for planar ornaments, the ones I recommend on HMC are ironically almost the same as Gallagher, but for different reasons, so we should still discuss it. Just like with Gallagher, Forge of the Calpagni Lantern is still mathematically their best planar set if your Trailblazer can consistently attack enemies with fire weakness, but without Fireflight that is quite an unrealistic thing to shoot for 100% of the time, so in reality their most consistent option is the Kingdom of Banditry set. Trailblazer will make great use of the set bonuses, and reaching 145 speed on them is quite important and quite easy to achieve anyway, so this will by far be the most consistent and high performing choice. You can situationally use Broken Keel or Fleet of the Ageless to give HMC more team buffing potential, but this will come at the cost of other much needed stats on them, like speed and break effect, or even sometimes energy recharge rate if you really needed it. And there are also much more niche options like Sprightly Von Whack if you really need to squeeze out the extra energy recharge rate, and it'll also allow your HMC to consistently open up each battle with an action, which will typically give them an earlier grab at their ultimate, and this can be useful for really tough fights, but overall this set will not provide HMC with their highest potential like Kingdom of Banditry will. In any case though, while you're farming for all of these relics and planar ornaments, you should be searching for an HP or defense body piece, speed boots, a break effect or energy recharge rope, and an HP or defense sphere. With regard to their stat spread, Harmony Trailblazer is easy. You literally just want to stack as much speed and break effect as possible. Obviously, I would recommend picking a certain speed breakpoint or threshold, say for example 145 if you're running Kingdom of Banditry, and once you've met that threshold, dump the rest of your stats into break effect, because you'll ideally want to reach at least 150% break effect, and Trailblazer can make use of literally as much break effect as you want to give them. It's not the end of the world if you get some defense and HP rolls here and there too, because Trailblazer quite nicely subs as a pseudo tank with Gallagher's healing and HMC's interactions with the Besotted healing. But anyway, currently Harmony MC's best light cones are Past Self and Mirror and Memories of the Past. Both perform quite competitively with one another as their best option, but you should know that Past Self and Mirror does not provide very efficient energy for Trailblazer's ultimate, so if you don't have them at E6 yet, you'll have to sacrifice some potentially important main stats for energy recharge, and you'll have to adjust your teams accordingly. But if you do have them at E6, you can freely use this light cone as their best option for its massive break effect increase and the huge team-wide buff. In most other cases though, Memories of the Past is almost exactly as useful of a light cone on them for the massive break effect bonus it provides, as well as the consistent energy it provides to HMC for their ultimate spam. But if neither of those options are available to you, or you're very limited on light cone options, you can fall back on meshing cogs for a reliable boost to Trailblazer's energy management. But I did also want to mention, if you have it and your Trailblazer is already at E6, so they have far fewer energy problems, you can use Dance 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 on them, and the Action Advance passive is actually quite nice for helping Gallagher's own ult spam and SP generation. So situationally, it can be respectably competitive with my aforementioned recommendations. And finally, if you have very limited options, or if you're feeling especially quirky, Dreamville Adventurer is a free-to-play light cone that can situationally be decent on HMC, but only if you're running them with teammates that output lots of skill damage, because that's the buff that Trailblazer will most effectively make use of with this odd little light cone. Again though, it'll never consistently outperform my aforementioned recommendations, because even if you don't have Past Self and Mirror, Memories of the Past, or Dance Dance Dance, Meshing Cogs is right there, and as a 3-star light cone, you very probably have at least a single copy of it lying around. But I suppose now is a good time to discuss the big flashy part of this whole video, since we covered everything else about Gallagher and HMC. How does one smash them together once they're built? Well, it's pretty simple. You create a Superbreak team. Duh, by far one of the strongest archetypes in the game right now, Superbreak teams involve using Harmony Trailblazer to enable a DPS to deal massive break damage and then continually dish out even more massive super break damage to weakness broken enemies. The reason why Gallagher fits so unbelievably well in this team as Harmony MC's duo is because he provides very comfortable sustain while simultaneously directly buffing one of the main sources of damage this team provides, break damage. It's also important to note that the only thing holding Harmony Trailblazer back in this team is SP management and energy management, both of which things can be very easily remedied by Gallagher's own kit, which, as I stated, provides all of these benefits and then some. When you're running characters like Firefly or Boot Hill or Himeko, who are generally not SP friendly, or at least not SP positive, it can be difficult for Trailblazer to consistently toss out their skill, which in turn makes it difficult to maintain their ultimate and enable the super break damage that carries this top tier team. But with Gallagher's help, this issue is entirely resolved, and he doubles down by buffing the very damage that makes the team so special. You do have to consider that when Gallagher breaks an enemy's weakness, which he likely will in some scenarios, they won't stay broken for as long, especially if your team doesn't include Ruan Mei. So the frequency by which your DPS can trigger Super Break will suffer just a little bit, but this isn't entirely an issue, especially not if you're mindful of enemy weakness bars and not running off on an auto battle. Depending on which character you slot into the DPS space on your team, Super Break will be a viable and potent archetype to run in virtually any of Star Rail's endgame content. For example, Himeko Super Break is quite a strong option in MOC and Pure Fiction. Boot Hill Super Break is a great option in MOC and especially APOC Shadow. And Firefly Super Break is kinda just good everywhere. Obviously, Firefly Super Break shines the most in MOC and APOC Shadow, but it's just an amazing all-around team right now. Of course, the only real and major downside to this Super Break team, and more specifically the god duo Gallagher and HMC, is that if an enemy can lock their toughness bar, you're kinda screwed. But don't worry, that toughness bar will unlock itself in 3 to 5 business days. Anyway, that's all I wanted to ramble about regarding these two powerful characters and the massive team archetype they thrive in together. Gallagher and Harmony MC are so strong in their niche and are so easily accessible compared to some other quite expensive archetypes, so seeing them thrive as much as they are these last few months has been a real treat, and I hope we see more options to diversify the Super Break archetypes come out in the future. If this video helped you in any way, please subscribe to my channel and join my Discord server, because we have a lot of cool people hanging out in there and I would love to have you. Anyways, I'm off to go scare myself with some videos of toughness locked enemies. I'll see you guys in the next video.